I'm Miriam Calhoun, 68 years old, and I've spent most of my life making sure everyone else in my family was taken care of. My husband, David, and I have been married for 48 years. And even now, when we sit together in our kitchen, sipping morning coffee, I can still feel the comfort of his steady presence beside me. This weekend was supposed to be simple, a short trip to Amber's cousin's cabin near the Quebec border. A chance to reconnect with our son, Brandon, his wife, and most importantly, our 8-year-old grandson, Liam. I could hear Liam's excited chatter echoing through the hallway as he stuffed his little backpack with games, his favorite stuffed raccoon peeking out of the top. His energy was contagious, and I found myself smiling despite the early hour. David peeked over his mug, raising an eyebrow. "You ready for a weekend with a house full of chaos?" he teased, though the corners of his mouth twitched with amusement. Chaos was part of family life, and I welcomed it. Liam had a way of making even the dullest errands feel like an adventure, and I'd spent countless weekends driving him to the park, reading him stories, and laughing until my sides hurt. But as I loaded the last of the suitcases into the SUV, a tiny unease tugged at the back of my mind. A small, black overnight bag had been left by the door, Amber insisting it would just be a little thing to carry. Something about it made my chest tighten, though I couldn't put a finger on why. I shrugged it off, chalking it up to overthinking. David buckled in beside me, and Liam bounced into the back seat, practically vibrating with excitement. As we pulled out onto the highway, I watched our son's car fade behind us. The road stretched ahead, calm and bright. Yet an unspoken tension settled over me. Quiet but insistent, I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and stole a glance at the overnight bag, wishing I could shake the nagging feeling that this trip might not be as ordinary as it seemed. I was adjusting the rearview mirror when my phone buzzed on the dashboard. The name flashing on the screen made my chest tighten. Brandon. He rarely called without reason, especially while we were already on the road. I swerved slightly as I answered. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice softer than usual, almost unnaturally gentle. "I just wanted to check. That bag you're bringing, the one Amber dropped off last night?" I glanced at the small black overnight bag sitting quietly in the back seat. "Yes, Brandon, it's right here." Why I tried to keep my tone light, dismissing the small chill creeping along my spine. "Nothing. Nothing at all," he replied quickly. Almost too quickly. There was a hesitation, a catch in his voice that made me pause. I just wanted to be sure everything was okay." I frowned, tightening my grip on the wheel. The road stretched ahead, bright and calm, yet his words left a strange taste in my mouth. "Everything's fine. It's just a bag." "Brandon," I said, forcing a laugh, though it sounded hollow even to me. There was a pause, and then he added, I love you." "Mom?" My hands froze on the wheel. Brandon never said that so casually, and certainly not over a short phone call while driving. The words should have been comforting, but instead, they set my nerves on edge. Something in the rhythm of his speech, the forced sweetness, made my stomach twist. I kept my eyes on the road, trying to swallow the sudden lump of dread. Every instinct I had from decades of raising children and guarding family safety was prickling. Amber had been unusually cheerful last night when she dropped the bag off. Too cheerful, her thanks lingering in a way that felt rehearsed. She had avoided looking directly at me. Her smile just a little too tight. I exhaled slowly, telling myself I was overthinking it, but a shadow of suspicion had been cast, and it wouldn't be easily shaken. Something about this weekend, this bag, this call, felt wrong in a way I couldn't ignore. I stole another glance at the bag nestled behind Liam's seat. Quiet, unassuming, yet already, without knowing why, I felt the weight of danger pressing down, subtle but insistent, like a whisper in the back of my mind. I glanced at the road ahead, but my mind drifted back to the years that had led us here. 5 years ago, Brandon had lost his job at the warehouse, blindsided by sudden downsizing. He and Amber were scrambling to make ends meet. And Liam was just 3, full of energy and innocence that demanded stability. I couldn't stand by and watch them struggle. It started small, a few $100s for groceries when bills came due. Gas money so Brandon could keep searching for work. But soon, it became almost every expense they couldn't cover. Rent, utilities, car payments, daycare for Liam. I wrote checks month after month, year after year, quietly absorbing their crises. Each time I handed Brandon another check. He promised, "Mom, I'll pay you back once I'm back on my feet." Amber would nod politely, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Sometimes I caught her rolling them when she thought I wasn't looking, or muttering little comments about how easy things were for some people. I tried to push those moments aside because family helps family. Right. And I loved spending time with Liam more than anything. Weekends were spent taking him to the park, reading stories, baking cookies, or just laughing until our sides ached. Those hours felt like the reward for every penny spent and every sacrifice made. Still, even with all my support, there was a subtle shift. Their reliance was no longer temporary. It had become expected. I had built a safety net that stretched across their entire lives, and every failure, every unexpected bill, only reinforced the idea that I would always be there to catch them. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but I carried it willingly for love, for family, for Liam. And yet, a small part of me had begun to wonder whether my generosity was being valued, or simply taken for granted. The phone call had started casually enough, with Brandon explaining the tuition at the private academy, $15,000 for the remainder of the term, and then $18,000 annually thereafter. I felt my stomach tighten. It was far beyond anything I'd ever contributed before. I loved Liam more than anything, but I knew we couldn't shoulder that kind of financial burden without compromising our own retirement plans. "I want him to have the best, Mom," Brandon said, his voice urgent but pleading. "This school will solve everything. He won't be bullied anymore, and he'll get individual attention." I listened carefully, forcing myself to remain calm. "Brandon," I said gently, "I love Liam, and I want him to thrive, but I think we should explore other options first. Maybe a local public school with good support programs, or talking to the teachers about the bullying." A long silence followed. Then Amber's voice came, flat and clipped. "So, you're saying no, yes," I replied softly, trying to keep the tension from boiling over. "I'm saying let's look at other options first." That was the moment everything shifted. Over the next few weeks, weekend visits quietly disappeared. Calls became infrequent. Conversations rushed and awkward. When Liam saw me at the grocery store, he ran over with a wide smile, arms open, and Amber quickly called him back, her tone sharp. I felt a stab of hurt watching him hesitate, confusion clouding his young face. It became clear that my refusal was not just about money, it had upset the fragile balance of expectation. My role as the reliable safety net had been taken for granted, and setting a single boundary was enough to trigger a cold, silent retaliation. The warmth I'd worked so hard to cultivate in our family was suddenly tinged with tension and distance. Even as I drove away that day, I held Liam's brief hug in my mind, feeling both protective love and a creeping frustration. It was the first time I realized that caring too much, without limits, could be exploited, and that standing firm, even gently, could provoke unexpected consequences. A week after the tense tuition conversation, the phone rang while David and I were sorting groceries. Brandon's cheerful voice filled the line, startling in its brightness. "Mom! Dad!" Amber and I were thinking, why don't we all go up to Quebec this weekend? Amber's cousin just had a cancellation at her cabin. Liam would love it, and it'll be a chance for all of us to reconnect. I hesitated. The recent coldness still lingered. The canceled visits, the clipped phone calls. Yet, the longing to see Liam outweighed my unease. "That sounds nice," I said cautiously. "We'll need to plan the trip." Amber chimed in, her voice almost sweet, thanking me for agreeing to carry an extra bag. "It's just a small overnight bag." "Mom," she said, placing emphasis on small. I accepted it without complaint. But the way she avoided looking at me directly, and the tightness in her smile, set my nerves on edge. It felt rehearsed, almost forced. As I packed the car that morning, I studied the bag again, black, unassuming, tucked neatly among Liam's backpack and fishing gear. Nothing appeared out of place. Yet I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something about it was off. The way Amber had insisted on it being just a little thing lodged in my mind, like a warning bell. David loaded the cooler, humming to himself, oblivious to my silent concern. Liam bounded around, testing the limits of the driveway with his little feet, laughter spilling into the crisp spring air. I smiled at him, letting some of the tension ease. But the oddity of the bag lingered at the back of my mind. As we pulled out, the family caravan fell into formation, Brandon in the lead, followed by Amber and Liam, and then David and I trailing behind with the luggage. The highway stretched ahead, familiar and calm, yet beneath it all, I felt a subtle, insistent undercurrent of unease, the first hint that this weekend might not be as ordinary as it seemed. The highway stretched ahead, sunlight glinting off the asphalt, but I couldn't shake the tightening in my chest. Brandon's car led the way, Amber beside him, Liam bouncing in the back seat with his usual excited chatter. Yet something in the rhythm of their voices, the small pauses and clipped phrases, made my stomach twist. I glanced at the overnight bag tucked behind Liam's seat. It seemed innocuous enough, black and ordinary, but every instinct I had, honed over decades of motherhood and grandmothering, was screaming that it wasn't just a bag. I tightened my grip on the wheel, my knuckles whitening. The feeling was subtle at first, almost dismissible, but it grew with every mile, a quiet alarm that refused to be ignored. Brandon's voice came through the radio speaker as he called, unusually soft. "Mom, just making sure everything's okay with the bag. You haven't had to move anything around." "Right." I froze, my hands hovering over the steering wheel. The phrasing was odd, too precise, too careful. "No. Brandon, it's right here. And everything is fine," I answered, forcing my voice calm. A short pause. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "I love you." "Mom? Really, I love you." Those words should have been reassuring, but the intensity, the unfamiliar desperation in his tone, set my nerves on fire. I had never heard him speak like that, not in 42 years of raising him, and Amber's earlier insistence on the bag being just a small overnight bag. Her tight, rehearsed smile, it all clicked together, a puzzle forming in my mind. Liam's laughter echoed from the back seat, a brief counterpoint to the storm gathering in my chest. I kept my eyes on the road, but my awareness sharpened. every sense alert. The warmth of family was there. Yes, but beneath it, a current of danger pulsed subtle, almost invisible to anyone else, but deafening to me. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my racing heart. The bag, the call, the rehearsed cheerfulness, it wasn't right. Every instinct I had screamed that the weekend we had looked forward to might not be ordinary at all. I couldn't see what lay ahead, but I knew with certainty that we needed to be prepared, and that the decisions I made in the next moments could change everything. We had pulled over at the next rest stop, the SUV idling quietly while the spring wind rustled the trees around us. My hands trembled slightly as I reached into the back seat, lifting the small black overnight bag. It was deceptively ordinary, zipped neatly, sitting innocently among Liam's backpack and a few fishing rods. I unfastened the zipper slowly, every instinct on high alert. Liam leaned forward from his booster seat, curious, but I motioned him back. David glanced over from the driver's seat, reading my expression, his brow furrowed. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. I swallowed hard, lifting the first item out, folded pajamas. Beneath them, I noticed small, tightly wrapped packages hidden in plastic, tucked with deliberate care. My stomach churned as realization struck. The packages weren't toys, weren't harmless trinkets. I knew what they were: drugs, enough to get anyone into serious trouble. And hidden among Liam's innocent belongings, shock slammed into me. Cold and visceral. My own son, the boy I had raised, and Amber, the woman I had trusted to care for my grandson, had planned to use me as an unwitting courier. They had counted on my love, my desire to protect Liam, my trust, and my instinct to reconnect as a shield to move illegal substances across the border. I took a step back, heart pounding, hands still holding the bag. My mind raced years of sacrifices, countless checks, late-night babysitting, all to support them, and now this betrayal, this calculation, staring me in the face, the warmth of family, the laughter of my grandson, the trust I had placed in them, all twisted into horror. David reached for my arm, steadying me. "We're not going anywhere," he said firmly, voice low, controlled. I nodded, unable to speak. The reality of what could have happened if we'd continued toward the border. If I'd simply obeyed Brandon's calm instructions. If my intuition had been wrong, sent a shiver down my spine. Every maternal instinct, every year of experience protecting my family, screamed at me to act. My hands shook as I zipped the bag back up, glancing at Liam, who was oblivious, laughing at a toy in his backpack. The weight of the weekend, the planned trip, had transformed into a matter of life and death. I looked at David, eyes wide, and said, barely above a whisper, "Turn the car around." The words carried a finality that left no room for argument. In that moment, fear, betrayal, and resolve fused into one unshakable clarity: we were taking back control. And nothing would allow us to go forward until this danger was removed. I turned to David, my voice steady despite the storm of fear and disbelief inside me. "Turn the car around, now." He didn't hesitate. With practiced calm, he signaled, checked the traffic, and executed a smooth U-turn. The tires whispered against the asphalt, and the weight of the decision settled over me like a shield. I glanced at the small black bag in the back seat, a silent reminder of what could have been. Liam sat innocently beside it, unaware of the danger that had lurked so close to him. We caught up to Brandon and Amber at the next exit, and I motioned for them to pull over. Brandon's face was pale, his usual confidence replaced by confusion and unease. Amber's rehearsed cheerfulness had vanished, replaced by a tight, defensive posture. "I know what's in that bag," I said firmly, my voice carrying over the hum of idling engines. Their eyes widened in panic. Brandon opened his mouth, but I cut him off. There's nothing to explain. You plan to put me at risk for your choices. That stops now. David stepped closer, his presence solid and unwavering. Brandon's gaze flicked between the two of us, searching for some hint of mercy or misunderstanding, but there was none. The betrayal was clear, the stakes undeniable. I felt a surge of clarity, years of worry, sacrifice, and enabling giving way to resolve. I will no longer provide financial assistance, no rent, no bills, no groceries, no daycare. Everything ends today, Amber tried to protest, her voice rising, but I didn't falter. My decision was not just about money. It was about protecting myself and Liam, about reclaiming the boundaries that had been ignored for far too long. Brandon's lips pressed into a thin line, his voice desperate yet restrained. Mom, please. I shook my head. You've had decades of support, and you've chosen to betray my trust. It's time to face the consequences of your own actions. The tension in the air was palpable as we returned to our SUV. David placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, and I felt the first wave of relief. The danger had been averted, and the moral power that had been quietly slipping away for years was finally mine again. As we drove away, Liam chattered about the scenery. Oblivious to the confrontation behind us, I breathed deeply, savoring the mixture of fear and triumph, knowing we had reclaimed our lives, and that no one, not even family, could take that safety and agency from us again. By the time the authorities arrived, Brandon and Amber were pale and frantic, their carefully constructed calm shattered. Agents explained that their attempt to cross the border with illegal substances had been intercepted, and they listed me as the emergency contact. Relief and disbelief washed over me in equal measure. Though my hands still trembled from the hours of tension, Liam clung to David and me, his small face wide with confusion. "Where are Mom and Dad?" he asked softly, clutching his backpack. I knelt beside him, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "You're safe with us, sweetheart. That's what matters right now." Over the next few weeks, the legal process unfolded predictably. Brandon and Amber faced serious charges, while the house they couldn't maintain without my support went into foreclosure, and their cars were repossessed. Liam began to settle into a new rhythm at our home, attending the local school I had once worked at, his teachers familiar and welcoming. The stability he needed had been restored, and his laughter returned, filling the spaces that tension and fear had hollowed out. As I watched him unpack his belongings in his new room, I reflected on the past 5 years, the sacrifices I had made, the boundaries I had hesitated to enforce, the lessons I had learned. Love without limits can be exploited, I realized, and generosity unchecked can put everything at risk. By asserting boundaries, by refusing to allow my trust to be used as leverage, I had not only protected myself, but also preserved the childhood and future of my grandson. The danger that had hung over us like a storm cloud had finally passed. In its place was clarity and quiet pride. The moral and practical consequences of choices made by adults would no longer threaten the safety of the ones I loved most. I felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that, for the first time in years, our family could breathe, rebuild, and find peace grounded in responsibility and care.